The Cardassians learned never to anger the humans when the USS Defiant blasted their warship into a million fragments of twisted, burning metal to save one pitiful Cardassian life. Captain Aaron Simmons gripped the armrests of his command chair as he watched the massive Cardassian warship loom on the viewscreen, its weapons locked on the USS Defiant. Moments ago, his ship had been conducting a routine patrol near the Cardassian border when they detected an unusual energy signature emanating from a nearby asteroid field. Investigating the anomaly, they discovered a heavily damaged Cardassian vessel with failing life support. Scans revealed a single fading life sign aboard. Despite the long history of bloody conflict between the humans and Cardassians, Simmons made the call to render aid, unwilling to let even an enemy die needlessly. Leading an away team, they found a sole survivor, a young, badly injured Cardassian officer named Lyra. Though initially hostile, she reluctantly accepted their help, knowing it was her only chance. As Simmons's crew worked feverishly to restore the ship's systems, he attempted to find common ground with Lyra, trying to overcome decades of ingrained hatred and mistrust between their peoples. But now, with the arrival of the Cardassian warship, weapons charged and shields raised, the delicate truce balanced on a razor's edge. "Surrender the Cardassian traitor and her vessel immediately," the Cardassian commander bellowed over the comm. "You are in violation of our sovereign territory." "Negative," Simmons replied firmly. "We're on a mission of mercy. The Cardassian is under our protection. We're not looking for a fight." The viewscreen went blank. A second later, the Defiant shuddered violently as the first salvo of Cardassian disruptor fire slammed against their shields. Captain Simmons gritted his teeth as another blast rocked the Defiant. The shields were holding, but they couldn't take this beating forever. He had to act fast. "Helm, take us into the asteroid field. Full impulse," Simmons ordered. "Use the rocks for cover." The helmsman's fingers flew across the console, and the Defiant surged forward, diving into the treacherous maze of tumbling space rocks. The ship weaved and rolled, narrowly avoiding collisions as the asteroids whizzed by, some close enough to scrape the shields. On the display, the massive Cardassian warship loomed into view, pursuing them into the field. But where the Defiant danced gracefully through the obstacles, the bulky Cardassian vessel lumbered and struggled. Chunks of rocky debris pounded against its hull, tearing gashes in the armor. Simmons watched the enemy ship's clumsy progress with a grim smile. "They're taking a beating in there. Tactical, target the asteroid field around the Cardassian ship. Destabilize the rocks with phaser fire." The tactical officer nodded, his hands moving over the weapons control panel. Precise beams of phaser energy lanced out, striking the larger asteroids near the enemy vessel. The rocks shattered and crumbled, creating a cascade of explosions and debris that engulfed the Cardassian warship. The enemy vessel reeled under the onslaught, its shields flickering and failing. Secondary explosions blossomed across its hull as critical systems overloaded. With a final, desperate burst of its thrusters, the crippled warship limped away, retreating from the field. A cheer erupted on the Defiant's bridge, but Simmons wasted no time on celebration. "Damage report!" "Shields at 60%, minor hull damage, no casualties," the tactical officer reported. "Good. Helm, take us back to Lyra's ship. We need to finish those repairs." In the corridors of the Defiant, Lyra watched in amazement as the human crew worked tirelessly to restore her vessel. They moved with purpose and perseverance, treating the Cardassian technology with the same care and respect they would their own. As the last of the critical systems came online, Lyra approached Captain Simmons. I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You risked your ship, your crew, for me, for a Cardassian." Simmons smiled. "We couldn't just leave you out there. It's not who we are." Lyra nodded, her eyes clouded with thought. "Captain, there's something you need to know. I have information about a planned Cardassian attack on a human colony. That's why my ship was out here trying to gather intel." Simmons's eyes widened. "This could save countless lives. We need to get this information to Starfleet Command." Lyra hesitated. the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She knew she was betraying her people, but the thought of more bloodshed, of the cycle of violence continuing, made her heart ache. "I'll come with you," she said at last. "I'll tell them everything I know." As the USS Defiant raced through the stars, its engines thrumming with urgency, Captain Aaron Simmons paced the length of his ready room. The weight of the information Lyra had provided hung heavy on his shoulders. He knew that every moment counted, and he had to act fast to prevent the impending Cardassian attack on the human colony. Simmons tapped his comm badge. "Simmons to bridge. Get me a secure channel to Starfleet Command." "Aye, sir," came the reply. Moments later, the face of Admiral Catherine Janeway appeared on the interface. Simmons wasted no time in relaying the critical intelligence Lyra had shared, his voice tight with the gravity of the situation. "Admiral, we have credible information about an imminent Cardassian attack on the Avalon colony. We need to act now to protect those civilians." Janeway's expression hardened as she processed the news. "Understood, Captain. This is a serious threat, and we can't afford to take any chances. I'm authorizing you to assemble a task force and intercept the Cardassian fleet before they reach the colony." Simmons nodded, his eyebrows furrowed. "Yes, ma'am, I'll gather my best officers and set a course immediately." With the weight of Starfleet's authority behind him, Simmons strode onto the bridge, his presence commanding attention. "Commander Briggs, Lieutenant Reed, I need you both in the conference room. We have a mission to plan." As his trusted first officer and chief engineer fell into step beside him, Simmons outlined the situation. In the conference room, Lyra stood waiting, her posture straight and her eyes filled with a resolute fire. "Captain Simmons," she began, her voice steady, "I want to join your mission. I have knowledge of Cardassian tactics and technology that could be invaluable. I can't sit by while innocent lives are at risk." Simmons paused, weighing the risks and benefits of involving Lyra. He knew she had already taken a tremendous leap of faith by sharing the intelligence, and her expertise could indeed prove crucial. With a nod, he made his decision. "All right, Lyra, your help will be appreciated. But understand, this will be dangerous. We'll be going up against your own people." Lyra met his gaze unflinchingly. "I'm prepared for that, Captain. I know what's at stake." As the Defiant set out to rendezvous with the other ships of the task force, tensions simmered among the crew. Some cast wary glances at Lyra, their trust in a Cardassian tested by years of conflict. Simmons addressed his crew, his voice ringing with conviction. "I know some of you have doubts about working with a Cardassian, but we are Starfleet. Our strength lies in our ability to look beyond our prejudices and unite towards a common goal. Lyra has proven her commitment to preventing this attack, and we will honor that by treating her as an equal member of this crew." As the task force warped through space, the sensors suddenly picked up a distress signal. On the monitor, a ragtag fleet of Cardassian civilian ships came into view, their hulls battered and scarred. Simmons leaned forward in his chair, his brow furrowed. "They're fleeing from something. Hail them." The face of a haggard Cardassian man filled the screen, his eyes haunted. "Please, we seek asylum. Our government has become a tyranny, and we fear for our lives." Simmons exchanged a glance with Lyra, seeing the pain and understanding in her eyes. He knew that offering protection to the civilians would complicate their mission, but he also knew it was the right thing to do. "We'll escort you to safety," Simmons promised. "The Federation will provide refuge." As the civilian ships fell into formation with the task force, Lyra turned to Simmons, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Captain. Your compassion, even for Cardassians, is remarkable. It's something I never expected from humans." Simmons offered a small smile. "We're not so different, Lyra. We all want a better future." As the task force approached the coordinates where the Cardassian fleet was expected to emerge, the tension on the bridge was palpable. Simmons gripped the chairs of his chair, his mind racing with strategies and contingencies. "Red alert! All hands to battle stations," he commanded, his voice steady. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, their faces set with commitment. On the display, the stars stretched and distorted as the Cardassian ships dropped out of warp, their weapons already charging. Simmons glanced at Lyra, seeing the steely willpower in her eyes. He knew that the coming battle would test them all, but he also knew that they would face it together, united by a common cause. With a deep breath, Simmons leaned forward, his eyes locked on the approaching enemy. This is it. Let's show them what we're made of. The USS Defiant dropped out of warp at the designated coordinates, flanked by the rest of Captain Simmons' task force. The bridge crew worked in tense silence, fingers hovering over consoles as they scanned for signs of the Cardassian fleet. Multiple warp signatures detected, sir, the tactical officer reported, his voice tight. Cardassian invasion force incoming. Simmons leaned forward in his chair. Defensive positions, all ships. Shields up, weapons hot. Space warped and twisted as dozens of Cardassian warships materialized before them, dwarfing the human task force. Their weapons ports glowed with charged energy, ready to unleash destruction. We're outnumbered 3-1, Commander Briggs muttered. Before Simmons could respond, space erupted in a cacophony of weapons fire. The Defiant rocked as disruptor blasts slammed against its shields. Return fire, Simmons ordered. Evasive maneuvers. As the battle raged, Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. Captain, I'm detecting a large cloaked vessel on the edge of the battlefield. It must be their command ship. Simmons's eyes narrowed. Helmsman, break formation. Take us on an attack run towards that cloaked ship. The Defiant peeled away from the main battle, streaking towards empty space. Lyra worked furiously at her console. Their cloaking systems have a vulnerability in the aft section. If we hit it with a focused tachyon burst... Do it, Simmons commanded. A lance of energy shot from the Defiant, striking seemingly empty space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a curtain being pulled back, a massive Cardassian vessel shimmered into view. Open a channel, Simmons said, rising to his feet. The Cardassian commander's face appeared on screen, a mix of shock and anger. This is Captain Simmons of the Federation. Surrender your vessel immediately or be destroyed. The Cardassian sneered. You dare threaten us? Crush this impudent human ship? The space around the Defiant lit up as the Cardassian fleet concentrated its fire. Shields flared and buckled under the assault. Shields at 30% and falling, the tactical officer shouted. Simmons's eyes darted to a nearby asteroid field. Target phasers on those rocks, full spread. The Defiant's weapons lashed out, not at enemy ships, but at the tumbling space debris. Explosions rippled through the field, sending massive chunks hurtling towards the Cardassian command ship. Too late, the Cardassians realized the danger. Their shields, still powering up after decloaking, offered no protection. Asteroids slammed into the vessel's hull, tearing gaping holes. Fires bloomed in the vacuum of space as the mighty ship went dark, adrift, and powerless. With their command structure in chaos, the Cardassian fleet's formation began to crumble. Simmons seized the moment. All ships, press the attack. Don't let up. What followed was a masterclass in tactical precision. Guided by Lyra's intimate knowledge of Cardassian weaknesses, the human task force struck with surgical efficiency. Weapons found gaps in shields. Engines were disabled with pinpoint accuracy. One by one, Cardassian ships winked out of the battle, destroyed, disabled, or in full retreat. The invasion force that had seemed unstoppable mere hours ago now lay in ruins. As the last enemy vessel fled, a cheer went up across the task force. On the Defiant's bridge, Simmons allowed himself a small smile. He knew that this victory would echo across the quadrant, a clear message to all. Humanity was not to be trifled with. The acrid smell of ozone and burnt circuitry filled the bridge of the USS Defiant as Captain Aaron Simmons surveyed the aftermath of their hard-fought victory. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and crew members rushed to extinguish small fires that had broken out during the intense battle. All ships report status, Simmons commanded, his voice hoarse from shouting orders. One by one, the captains of the task force vessels relayed their conditions. The reports painted a grim picture, shields depleted, weapons systems strained to their limits, and hulls scarred by Cardassian weapons fire. Yet beneath the damage, Simmons sensed a newfound energy among his crews, a fierce pride in their unexpected triumph against overwhelming odds. "Commander Briggs, Lieutenant Reed, Lyra, meet me in the conference room immediately," Simmons ordered, striding purposefully off the bridge. As they gathered around the table, holographic displays flickered to life, showing the battered Cardassian command ship drifting helplessly amid the debris field. Lyra's eyes widened as she studied the readings. "Captain," she said, her voice urgent, "that vessel isn't just any warship. It's the Garkos, personal flagship of Gul Travar. If he was commanding this invasion force—" Simmons leaned forward, his interest piqued. "Go on." Lyra's fingers danced across the console, pulling up schematics of the Cardassian vessel. The Garkos houses a state-of-the-art computer core, likely containing detailed plans for future Cardassian military operations. And if Gul Travar is aboard, we could potentially capture one of the highest-ranking military officials in the Cardassian Union. The implications hung heavy in the air. Simmons's mind raced, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. He turned to his first officer. "Nolan, what's your assessment?" Commander Briggs stroked his chin thoughtfully. "It's a golden opportunity, sir. But we'd have to move fast. They'll be working to purge their databanks and may attempt to scuttle the ship rather than let it fall into our hands." Simmons nodded, his decision made. "Agreed. We're going to take that ship. Commander, assemble our best security personnel. Lyra, you'll accompany them. Your knowledge of Cardassian systems will be crucial." As Briggs began selecting team members, Simmons outlined his plan. They would approach under the cover of battle debris, using a specially modified shuttle to breach the Garkos's hull at a vulnerable point identified by Lyra. Within minutes, the strike team assembled in the shuttle bay. Phaser rifles were distributed, and Lyra provided last-minute briefings on Cardassian ship layouts and security protocols. The tension was palpable as the team boarded the shuttle, each member acutely aware of the dangers that lay ahead. The shuttle slipped silently through the debris field, maneuvering past twisted hull fragments and still-burning wreckage. As they approached the Garkos, Lyra pointed out a section of the hull where the armor was thinnest. "There," she whispered, her voice tight with anticipation. "That's our best point of entry." The shuttle's cutting beam lanced out, slicing through the weakened hull. With a hiss of escaping atmosphere, a jagged hole opened before them. Commander Briggs turned to his team, his expression grim. "Remember your training," he said firmly. "Stay together, watch each other's backs, and let's bring everyone home. Move out." They surged through the breach, immediately encountering a squad of disoriented Cardassian soldiers. Phaser fire erupted in the confined space, filling the air with the smell of burnt flesh and ozone. Briggs dropped 2 Cardassians with precise shots, while Lyra used her knowledge of Cardassian combat techniques to outmaneuver a burly soldier, sending him crashing to the deck with a well-placed strike. As they fought their way deeper into the ship, Lyra's guidance proved invaluable. She led them through service tunnels and back corridors, avoiding the heaviest concentrations of enemy forces. But as they approached the central computer core, resistance stiffened. A group of Cardassian elite guards, their armor gleaming even in the ship's emergency lighting, formed a defensive line before the core access. Their leader, a scarred veteran with cold eyes, raised his weapon. "Surrender now, Federation dogs," he snarled, "and we may yet show mercy." Briggs' response came in the form of a stun grenade that arced over the Cardassian line, exploding in a blinding flash. The strike team surged forward, engaging in brutal close-quarters combat. Fists flew, rifle butts cracked against scaled skin, and the air filled with grunts of exertion and cries of pain. In the chaos, Lyra spotted a gap in the Cardassian formation. "Commander!" she shouted, pointing toward the computer core's entrance. "This way!" Briggs nodded, signaling a portion of his team to follow while the others kept the guards occupied. They sprinted for the door, Lyra's fingers flying over the access panel. With a soft chime, the massive doors slid open, revealing the prize within. As they secured the core and began the data download, Briggs' communicator crackled to life. "Briggs here," he answered, slightly out of breath. Captain Simmons' voice came through, tense but controlled. "Status report, Commander." "We've secured the computer core, sir," Briggs replied. "Downloading data now. We've also captured several high-ranking officers, including one who matches Ghoul Trevor's description." There was a moment of silence before Simmons responded. "Excellent work. Bring them aboard the Defiant as soon as the download is complete. We'll sort them out here." As the data streamed into their systems, the captured Cardassian commander, his once pristine uniform now torn and stained, glared at Briggs with undisguised hatred. "You have no idea what you've done," he hissed. "I can offer you information beyond your wildest dreams. Release me, and I'll tell you secrets that could turn the tide of this war." Briggs regarded him coldly. "Save it for Captain Simmons," he said flatly. "I'm sure he'll be very interested in what you have to say." Back on the Defiant, Simmons listened impassively as the Cardassian commander made his desperate offer. The captain's face remained impassive, betraying none of the turmoil he felt within. Finally, he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of command. "You planned an unprovoked attack on a civilian colony," Simmons said, his tone hard as steel. "You'll face justice for your crimes against the Federation. Take him to the brig." As the Cardassian was led away, protesting vehemently, Simmons turned to his senior staff. The data they'd retrieved from the Garkos was already yielding valuable insights into Cardassian military capabilities and future plans. "This is a game changer," Lieutenant Reed said, his eyes wide as he scanned through the intelligence reports. "With this information, we could potentially cripple the Cardassian war machine." Simmons nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He knew that their actions today would have far-reaching consequences, reshaping the balance of power in the quadrant. As news of their victory spread, the crew of the Defiant stood a little taller, pride evident in their bearing. They had faced an overwhelming enemy and emerged victorious, capturing a prize beyond their wildest expectations. In the days that followed, reports filtered in from across Cardassian space. Rumors spoke of a human captain who had turned certain defeat into a stunning victory, capturing one of their most advanced warships and its command staff. The name Simmons was whispered with a mixture of fear and grudging respect in the corridors of Cardassian power. For Captain Aaron Simmons, the victory brought not just accolades, but a deepened sense of purpose. He had protected his people, upheld the ideals of the Federation, and struck a blow against those who would threaten peace in the galaxy. As the Defiant set course for home, Simmons stood on the bridge, gazing out at the stars, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. Captain Aaron Simmons stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, watching as the captured Cardassian command ship was slowly pulled into position by tractor beams. The massive vessel dwarfed his own, its scarred hull a testament to the ferocity of their recent battle. "Tractor beams engaged and holding steady, sir," reported Lieutenant Reed from Tactical. Simmons nodded. "Set course for Starbase 375 maximum warp. Let's get this prize back to Federation space as quickly as possible." As the stars streaked past the view screen, Simmons retreated to his ready room. He sat at his desk, surrounded by data pads containing the initial analysis of the Cardassian computer core. His eyes widened as he scrolled through report after report, each one revealing a piece of a terrifying puzzle. "Computer, secure channel to Starfleet Command. Priority 1. The face of Admiral Harrison appeared on the screen. "Captain Simmons, I trust you have news?" Simmons leaned forward. "Admiral, we've uncovered evidence of a massive Cardassian plot. They're planning coordinated strikes against multiple human colonies across the sector. The scale is unprecedented." He transmitted the data, watching the Admiral's expression grow grave as he absorbed the information. "This is worse than we feared," Harrison said. "I'm convening an emergency session of the Admiralty. We need to mobilize every available ship to protect those colonies." As Simmons ended the transmission, he heard a chime at his door. Commander Briggs entered, his face tight with frustration. "Any progress with the prisoners?" Simmons asked. Briggs shook his head. "Gul Marak is proving resistant to our methods. He hasn't said a word beyond name and rank. Simmons frowned. We need that information, Nolan. The data we've recovered is damning, but there are still gaps. Details that could save countless lives. I may have a solution, sir, Briggs said hesitantly. Lyra, her knowledge of Cardassian interrogation techniques could be invaluable. Simmons considered this for a moment. Do it, but tread carefully. This could be a serious test of her loyalty. On the captured Cardassian ship, Lyra stood outside the makeshift brig, steeling herself for what lay ahead. She entered to find Gul Marak seated at a small table, his wrists bound. His eyes narrowed as he recognized her. Ah, the traitor, he spat. Come to gloat? Lyra sat across from him, her face a mask of calm. I've come to talk, Gul Marak, about the future of Cardassia. I have nothing to say to you, Marak growled. Then listen, Lyra said, leaning forward. I know about the planned attacks, the scope of the operation. What I don't understand is how you think this ends well for our people. Marak's eyes widened slightly, but he remained silent. Lyra pressed on. You were always a student of history, Marak. You know what happened the last time a power tried to conquer the Federation through brute force. The Dominion War nearly destroyed us all. She saw a flicker of doubt in Marak's eyes. This is different, he muttered. Is it? Lyra countered. Or is it the same pattern of aggression that has cost Cardassia so dearly in the past? For hours, Lyra engaged in a battle of wits and will with Merrick. She appealed to his sense of duty, his strategic mind, and ultimately, his love for Cardassia itself. Slowly, she saw his willpower begin to crumble. Finally, Lyra laid out a series of pads before him. This is what we know. The targets, the staging areas, the overall strategy. What we don't know are the details that could prevent unnecessary bloodshed on both sides. Merrick stared at the information, his face ashen. If I had known the full scope... You can still make a difference, Lyra said softly. Help us stop this before it's too late. Merrick looked up, conflict written across his features. Then, with a heavy sigh, he began to speak. Hours later, Captain Simmons stood before a wall of tactical displays, briefing his senior staff on their new intelligence. Thanks to Gul Marak's cooperation, we now have a complete picture of the Cardassian battle plan, he said. We've transmitted this information to Starfleet Command. They're already moving to fortify key positions and evacuate civilian populations where necessary. Lieutenant Reed studied the displays. Sir, with this intelligence, we could potentially turn their entire strategy against them. Simmons nodded. That's exactly what we intend to do. We're going to use every advantage we've gained to ensure that not a single Federation colony falls to this attack. As the Defiant raced towards its rendezvous with the gathering Federation fleet, news of their victory and the captured Cardassian ships spread like wildfire. On a dozen Cardassian warships, officers whispered in shadowed corners, questioning the wisdom of their leaders and the path they had chosen. Captain Aaron Simmons stood before the tactical display, his eyes scanning the intricate web of Cardassian military installations. The intelligence from Gul Marak had given them a crucial advantage, and Simmons intended to use it. We have a narrow window of opportunity, he said, addressing his senior staff. Our targets are these two facilities. He highlighted a massive shipyard and a heavily fortified supply depot on the display. Commander Nolan Briggs leaned in, studying the shipyard's defenses. That's a tough nut to crack, sir. Which is why you'll be leading the assault on it, Simmons replied. Take the Defiant. I want that shipyard out of commission. Briggs nodded, a glint of excitement in his eyes. We'll get it done, Captain. Simmons turned to the rest of his staff. I'll be personally leading the attack on the supply depot. Lieutenant Reed, prep the task force. We move out in 6 hours. As the staff filed out, Lyra approached Simmons. Captain, I have additional information on the depot's security protocols. It could give us an edge. Excellent work, Lyra. Brief Lieutenant Reed immediately. Hours later, the USS Defiant slipped through the inky blackness of space, its cloaking device engaged. On the bridge, Commander Briggs watched as the massive Cardassian shipyard loomed before them. "All teams, prepare for deployment," Briggs ordered. "Remember, our primary objective is to cripple their production capabilities." Stealth shuttles detached from the Defiant, carrying strike teams towards the shipyard's outer hull. Briggs watched the feeds from their helmet cams as they used specialized cutting tools to breach the facility. Inside the shipyard, the strike teams moved swiftly through darkened corridors. They planted charges at key junctions and sabotaged control systems. Alarms began to blare as the Cardassians detected the intrusion. "Teams, fall back to extraction points," Briggs commanded. "Defiant, prepare to engage orbital defenses." As the strike teams fought their way back to their shuttles, the Defiant decloaked. Its powerful weapons systems came online, targeting the shipyard's defensive batteries. Phaser fire lanced out, cutting through the shipyard's shields. Quantum torpedoes streaked towards weapon emplacements, reducing them to twisted metal. "Sir, Cardassian warships incoming," Lieutenant Chen reported from Tactical. Briggs's hands tightened on his chair's armrests. "Evasive maneuvers. Keep their attention on us while our teams complete extraction." The Defiant danced through space, its superior maneuverability allowing it to stay ahead of the Cardassian ship's weapons. As the last shuttle docked, Briggs gave the order. "All weapons, fire at will. Target their manufacturing centers." The Defiant unleashed its full arsenal, joined by the returning strike shuttles. The shipyard's superstructure buckled under the assault, massive explosions chaining through its production facilities. As they pulled away from the devastated shipyard, Briggs allowed himself a small smile. "Well done, everyone. Let's hope the captain's having similar success." Meanwhile, Captain Simmons led his task force through a series of lightning-fast attacks on the Cardassian supply depot's outer defenses. Lyra's intelligence proved invaluable, allowing them to bypass the most heavily fortified sectors. "We've breached their inner perimeter," Lieutenant Reed reported. "Scans show massive ordnance stockpiles in sectors 7 through 12. Simmons nodded grimly. "All ships, target those sectors. Concentrated phaser fire on my mark." The task force's ships moved into position, their weapons charged and ready. "Fire!" A barrage of phaser beams struck the depot's munitions storage. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a blinding flash erupted from the facility's core. The chain reaction spread rapidly, engulfing entire sections of the depot in massive fireballs. Simmons watched as the depot tore itself apart, years' worth of Cardassian war material disappearing in an instant. "All ships, fall back to safe distance," he ordered. As they retreated, reports began flooding in from across Cardassian space. The destruction of the shipyard and depot had sent shockwaves through the Empire. Uprisings erupted on occupied worlds, while acts of sabotage crippled military installations. On the bridge of his flagship, Simmons absorbed the flood of information. They had struck a decisive blow, but the war was far from finished. The Cardassian leadership would be reeling, forced to divert resources to internal threats rather than their planned offensive. "Sir," Lieutenant Reed said, his voice filled with awe, "reports are coming in from liberated worlds. They're calling you the Hammer of the Federation." Simmons shook his head, uncomfortable with the notion. "We did what was necessary, nothing more. Set course for Starbase 375. It's time we brought the fleet up to speed on the new strategic situation." As they warped away from Cardassian space, Simmons knew that their actions had fundamentally altered the course of the conflict. The coming days would be crucial in solidifying their advantage and pushing for a lasting peace. The Cardassian Central Command buzzed with frantic activity. Gul Dukat strode through the corridors, his boots echoing on the metal floors. He entered the main strategy room, where the highest-ranking military leaders huddled around a holographic display of the sector. "Gentlemen," Dukat announced, his voice cutting through the chatter, "I have a solution to our predicament." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Dukat stepped forward, manipulating the hologram to show Captain Simmons' recent victories. "We cannot match the Federation's firepower or tactics," Dukat said, "but we can exploit their greatest weakness, their sentimentality." He outlined his plan to capture Simmons, watching as the other leaders' expressions shifted from skepticism to grudging approval. "Very well, Ducat," the lead strategist said. "You have your strike force. Do not fail us." Aboard his flagship, Ducat pored over intelligence reports, piecing together Simmons' likely movements. His eyes glinted as he spotted a pattern. "There," he muttered, "the outpost on Corrales 3. That's where we'll spring our trap." Unaware of the danger, Simmons led his team through the dense underbrush of Corrales III. They approached a squat, fortified building, the Cardassian outpost. "Remember," Simmons whispered to his squad, "we're here for the intel. In and out, quick and quiet." They breached the outer defenses with practiced ease. Inside, they encountered stiffer resistance. Phaser fire erupted in the narrow corridors. Simmons ducked behind a console, returning fire. "Team 2, flank left," he shouted over the din. The firefight intensified. Simmons saw an opening and dashed forward, only to find himself cut off from his squad. Cardassian soldiers poured in from side passages. "Fall back," Simmons ordered through his communicator. "Get to the extraction point." "But sir," his second-in-command protested. "That's an order, Commander. I'll hold them off." Simmons fought like a man possessed, his phaser cutting down Cardassians with deadly accuracy. But for each one that fell, 2 more took their place. A blast caught Simmons in the shoulder, spinning him around. He stumbled, vision blurring. Through the haze, he saw a new wave of soldiers enter, different uniforms moving with lethal precision. Ducat's strike force had arrived. A stun blast hit Simmons square in the chest. As consciousness faded, he felt rough hands dragging him away. Ducat stood over the unconscious Simmons, a triumphant smile playing across his face. "Secure him," he ordered. "Our guest of honor deserves special accommodations." On the bridge of Simmons' ship, Commander Briggs received the devastating news. They took the captain," the shell-shocked soldier reported. Briggs gripped the command chair, his knuckles turning white. "All ships, this is Commander Briggs. Captain Simmons has been captured. I repeat, Captain Simmons is in enemy hands." A pall fell over the gathered ships. The symbol of their resistance, their beacon of hope, had fallen. In his quarters aboard the Cardassian flagship, Ducat crafted a message to be broadcast across the sector. "People of the Federation," he began, his voice dripping with false concern. "Your vaunted hero, Captain Simmons, now rests in Cardassian custody. We are prepared to negotiate for his safe return, for a price." Deep in the bowels of a secret Cardassian stronghold, Simmons lay on the cold floor of his cell. His body ached, but his mind raced. He studied the guard rotations, the layout of his prison. Slowly, a plan began to form. "You haven't won yet, Ducat," Simmons muttered, his eyes gleaming with defiance. "This war is nowhere near the end." Captain Simmons's body ached as he lay on the cold metal floor of his cell. The dim lighting cast eerie shadows across the room, barely illuminating the bruises and cuts that covered his skin. He closed his eyes, focusing on his breathing to manage the pain. The rhythmic footsteps of the guards echoed through the corridor outside. Simmons's mind raced, analyzing every detail of his surroundings. He noted the slight buzz of the force field at his cell's entrance, the pattern of the guard rotations, and the faint hum of distant machinery. Each piece of information was cataloged and stored, forming the foundation of his escape plan. As he heard the familiar sound of the maintenance crew approaching, Simmons tensed. This was his chance. He feigned unconsciousness as the force field dropped and a guard entered to escort the maintenance worker. In a lightning-fast move, Simmons sprang up, driving his elbow into the guard's throat. The Cardassian dropped, gasping for air. Simmons swiftly incapacitated the shocked maintenance worker with a precise strike to the head. Heart pounding, Simmons stripped the guard of his weapon and communication device. He dragged both unconscious Cardassians into the cell, securing them with their own restraints. Stepping into the corridor, Simmons moved with purpose, his bare feet silent on the cold floor. He encountered 2 more guards at an intersection. Without hesitation, Simmons fired, stunning both before they could raise an alarm. He appropriated their weapons, arming himself for the challenges ahead. Finding a secluded alcove, Simmons accessed a nearby computer terminal. His fingers flew over the alien interface, bypassing security protocols and gaining control of critical systems. Alarms began to blare as he initiated a facility-wide shutdown of internal sensors and security measures. Simmons quickly encoded a distress signal, embedding his coordinates and a request for immediate extraction. As he sent the transmission, he heard the sound of approaching footsteps. He ducked into a side passage, narrowly avoiding a squad of Cardassian soldiers rushing to respond to the alarms. Moving deeper into the facility, Simmons targeted key infrastructure. He overloaded power conduits, causing cascading failures throughout the stronghold. Life support systems sputtered and failed, plunging entire sections into darkness and chaos. Cardassian voices shouted in confusion and anger as Simmons slipped through the shadows, always one step ahead of his pursuers. He planted explosive charges at strategic points, preparing for his last attempt. Suddenly, Ducat's voice boomed over the facility's communication system. "Attention all personnel. Initiate self-destruct sequence. Authorization, Ducat Omega 37. Simmons smiled grimly. He had anticipated this move and had already locked out the self-destruct controls. Ducat's desperate ploy had failed. As Cardassian forces converged on his position, Simmons activated the charges. Explosions rocked the facility, collapsing corridors and sealing off entire sections. Through the chaos and debris, Simmons made his way to the surface level, emerging into the harsh light of the planet's twin suns. In the distance, he saw a Federation shuttle touching down. Commander Briggs emerged, phaser at the ready, leading a team of heavily armed officers. Simmons stumbled towards them, exhausted but triumphant. "Captain!" Briggs called out, rushing to support his commanding officer. "Are you all right, sir?" Simmons nodded, his voice hoarse. "I'm fine, Commander, but we're not done yet. We need to capitalize on this victory while the Cardassians are reeling." As they boarded the shuttle, reports began flooding in from across the sector. News of Simmons's escape and the destruction of the Cardassian stronghold spread rapidly, inspiring acts of rebellion on occupied worlds. Simmons sat in the co-pilot's seat, his mind already formulating their next move. "Set course for Starbase 375, he ordered. "We have a war to win." The shuttle lifted off, leaving behind the smoking ruins of the Cardassian facility. Simmons looked out at the stars, his eyes blazing with. Captain Aaron Simmons stood on the bridge of his flagship, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of Cardassia Prime and its orbital shipyards. The tension in the air was palpable as crew members worked furiously at their stations, preparing for the ultimate gambit. "All ships report in," Simmons ordered, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. One by one, the captains of his task force confirmed their readiness. Simmons nodded, then turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to Commander Briggs." Briggs's face appeared on the main view screen, his features set with unbreakable spirit. "Sir, we're ready to proceed. The virus is primed, and our team is in position aboard the Cardassian supply vessel." "Understood, Commander. You know the stakes. Good hunting," Simmons said, his voice low. As the communication ended, Simmons took a deep breath. "Tactical. Prepare to engage the Cardassian defense grid on my mark. Helm, plot an attack vector that'll draw their attention away from the supply lanes." The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, fingers flying over consoles as they readied for battle. Simmons felt the familiar surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins. "All ships execute," Simmons commanded. The task force burst into action, streaking towards the Cardassian defenses in a dazzling display of coordinated maneuvers. Phaser fire and photon torpedoes lit up the space around the shipyards as Cardassian vessels scrambled to respond. Aboard the captured supply ship, Briggs and his team tensed as they approached the massive orbital facility. "Steady," Briggs whispered to his operatives. "Remember your training. We get in, plant the virus, and get out." The supply ship docked without incident, the chaos of the battle masking their approach. Briggs led his team through the airlock, their Cardassian disguises holding up under cursory inspection. As they made their way deeper into the shipyards, alarms blared, and Cardassian crew members rushed past them towards battle stations. Briggs and his team moved with purpose, their path clear thanks to Lyra's inside knowledge. They reached a primary computer node, and Briggs nodded to his tech specialist. "Do it," he ordered. The specialist's fingers flew over the alien interface, bypassing security protocols and inserting the virus. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, systems began to fail across the facility. "Virus deployed successfully," the specialist reported. "We have approximately 10 minutes before total system failure." Briggs allowed himself a small smile. "Let's move out." But as they turned to leave, a squad of Cardassian security officers rounded the corner, weapons raised. "Halt!" the lead officer shouted. Briggs and his team reacted instantly, diving for cover as phaser fire erupted in the corridor. The close-quarters battle was fierce, with neither side willing to give ground. On the bridge of his ship, Simmons watched the battle unfold with growing concern. The Cardassian defenses were proving tougher than anticipated, and there was no sign that Briggs's team had succeeded. Suddenly, the shipyard's shields flickered and died. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "the Cardassian systems are failing." Simmons leaned forward, hope rising in his chest. "Briggs did it," he murmured. But his elation was short-lived as he saw the shipyard's massive doors begin to close. "They're initiating a lockdown," Simmons realized with horror. "All ships, concentrate fire on those doors. We need to keep them open for Briggs and his team." The battle intensified as Simmons' ships pounded the shipyard's outer defenses, desperately trying to create an escape route for their comrades trapped inside. Inside the facility, Briggs and his team fought their way through waves of Cardassian security forces, their path to freedom blocked at every turn. As they took cover behind a fallen bulkhead, Briggs tapped his communicator. "Briggs to Simmons," he shouted over the din of battle. "We're cut off. The lockdown protocols have sealed all exits." Simmons's face paled as he heard the report. He turned to his crew, desperation evident in his eyes. "We need options, people. I'm not leaving them behind." As the situation grew increasingly dire, Lyra stood silently at her station, her mind racing. She looked at the tactical display, then at the worried faces of her human comrades. In that moment, she made her decision. Without a word, Lyra slipped away from the bridge, making her way to the shuttle bay. As she prepared for launch, she sent a final message to Simmons. "Captain, I can breach the lockdown from inside. It's been an honor serving with you." Before Simmons could respond, Lyra's shuttle shot out of the bay, streaking towards the heart of the Cardassian shipyards. Simmons watched in disbelief as Lyra's shuttle disappeared into the massive structure. "Lyra, what are you doing?" he demanded over the comm. "What needs to be done," came her calm reply. Inside the shipyards, Briggs and his team continued their desperate fight for survival. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the facility. Alarms blared as emergency force fields flickered and died. "This is our chance," Briggs shouted to his team. "Move!" They fought their way through the chaos, finally reaching their extraction point. As they boarded their ship, Briggs looked back at the devastation. "Where's Lyra?" he asked, a sinking feeling in his gut. Aboard his flagship, Simmons watched as the shipyards began to break apart, consumed by secondary explosions. His heart heavy, he ordered the evacuation of all friendly forces. As the task force regrouped at a safe distance, the full impact of their victory, and its cost, began to sink in. Simmons stood at the viewport, watching the once mighty Cardassian shipyards crumble into space debris. Lieutenant Reed approached, his voice somber. "Sir, Commander Briggs and his team are safely aboard, but there's no sign of Lyra." Simmons closed his eyes, grief washing over him. "She knew," he said softly. "She knew it was the only way." The bridge fell silent, the crew struggling to process the magnitude of Lyra's sacrifice. Simmons turned to face them, his eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and pride. "Today, we've struck a crippling blow against the Cardassian war machine," he said, his voice steady despite his emotions. But let us never forget the price of this victory. Lyra gave her life not just for us, but for the hope of a better future for both our peoples. As word of Lyra's heroic act spread throughout the sector, the impact was immediate and far-reaching. On Cardassian-occupied worlds, citizens who had long suffered under the regime's oppressive rule began to rise up, inspired by the courage of one of their own who had dared to stand against tyranny. Simmons and his crew mourned their fallen comrade, even as they prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. They knew that Lyra's sacrifice had changed the course of the war, but the final chapters of this conflict were yet to be written.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.